Hey, welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. This is a great episode, if I say so myself. We are refreshed from our 2-year break. Jenn joins us in the episode, and I tell some stories that I don't think I've ever told on the podcast before. We're talking all about the energy body, auras, seeing crazy shit, having a good time, just trying to be a good human. So thanks for being here and enjoy the show. All right, and we are live. Jennifer is here. Welcome to the Vanchovy Studios.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's everything that I ever hoped it would be.
Look at us.
Yeah, it's like the van is the perfect podcast studio. I don't know why we didn't start recording things in here before, like within the last 2 years.
Yeah, about that. I had to take some time off. I wasn't sure what I was thinking.
Well, we moved to Indiana. That's what we were thinking.
Ooh, yeah, that's been a big adjustment. All the things.
It's been 1 year of Vanchovy moving across the country, now getting settled into the house. And now instead of hanging out in the house, we're hanging out in the driveway in Vanchovy. I love it.
I was going to say free parking, but it's probably like the most expensive parking that we've ever had for the van.
That's true. But the good thing is that the neighbors don't seem to care about it. They don't, like the HOA, I think you're not supposed to have a truck like this in the neighborhood, but luckily no one has complained yet. So I think we're good to go.
Yeah. Until they see us coming in here with our computers and all the things to record, and we're in here all the time, and they're like, what exactly are you guys doing in there? And the neighbors are watching. Like, we're in suburbia. Like, they're definitely paying attention.
Yeah, they think we're so weird. Like, nobody understands who we are or what we do. They're like, wait, you work from home and you have a wellness business and you have this van and you go in and out of there, and neither of you ever really leave the house except for when you go on epic travel adventures. They're just thoroughly confused by us through and through.
Well, and if they listen to this episode, they're going to be even more confused and not know what to do with us, because we're talking all about auras and energy and all the things in anticipation of our new offering of a course that we are launching here in a little bit called Oils and the Energy Body.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. Mostly because Jim has all these weird stories and different things, and we finally get to pick his brain and understand how he sees the world through energy. And it's part of the reason why I married him. I love all these weird stories he has all the time, and just seeing the world through his eyes is totally different than my experience. And when the two collide, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's got, it's kind of trippy for me to be back here in the Midwest, because especially like as we've been making this course and I've been thinking more about energy and auras and, my work over the last 20 years of working with people, to be back in the land where like it all started for me is like, it's been a little weird, because I went and had, acupuncture businesses. We've done well in Miami and New York, and now with the essential oils, and then like COVID and the craziness, and like coming back here, I don't know, there's just something about this land, as much as it sucks in the wintertime, and spring that we're in right now can be like brutal, where it teases you with great weather one day and then like a blizzard the next day. But there's still just something unmistakable to me about the land and the soil here that like, it just does something to my energy field. That I don't know. It's like I get tapped in a little bit more than maybe in some of the other places. Maybe it's because there's just nothing else to do except to like sit and be with yourself.
Maybe that's it, because that is not my experience. I feel like that when I go to Colorado, or maybe it has something to do with where you're born. I'd be curious if some of the astrologers would, reach out to us and talk about that, because I feel that way when I go home to the mountains and the Rocky Mountains, and it's just like, I mean, you've seen me. Sometimes I cry thinking about it because it just feels like home in my body. And I've only had that happen one other time, which is like in Scotland when we went there. Remember when we went, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just feel like ancestors somehow. But I don't feel that about this land. So can you tell us a little bit more about your experience and like, I don't know, what it was like growing up here, or how some of this journey got started for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know I mean, about the land, I don't know. There's just, maybe it's just from where you're from, and it's just where I experienced adolescence. But, we're going to be in talking about, one of the reasons I started this podcast was because I had certain experiences, especially growing up, that I wanted to normalize for the next generation, so that if there is someone out there that's listening, or maybe a listener has someone in their life, especially someone who might be like a teenager who, is having some of these experiences, like anything good that's ever happened, or that any good impact I've ever been able to make on someone, it's because when I started having crazy shit happen to me, I was supported by my elders. I found mentors, attracted mentors that were able to like nurture this development instead of trying to shut it down, squash it, get me on medication, put me in a mental institution. I mean, what's crazy now is like looking at some of these experiences that I had of like hearing voices and seeing energy, which we'll talk about in a minute. Like those are all qualifications in the DSM-5 for like mental illness.
Totally.
And this is where so much of like context matters. Like what is the context in which you're being raised? Are you being celebrated for these things? Are you being heard? Are you being encouraged? And for me, maybe it's this sort of trickster energy that I'm comfortable with. Like I knew enough, maybe I just never committed all the way to going like full woo, but I knew enough of how to play the game that like I wasn't going to get institutionalized. It's like I could have these experiences, but then still present myself as being like normal.
Right. Like you didn't lose touch of reality, but you were like seeing things and feeling things.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's, I grew up in a household where after my parents got divorced, my mom started studying new age things, and she would go off on these kind of retreats and stuff. And I would hear her talking about some things. Like we had Barbara Brennan's book, Hands of Light, was floating around through my house at some point. And, I had some experiences earlier, like when I was about 15, where I started like feeling energy and, I don't know if you want to call them ghosts or spirits or whatever. But what's relevant for what we're doing now and like launching this course and what we've put together in the Oils and the Energy Body course is, one night when I was about 15, one morning, it was literally like overnight, I woke up and I could see auras around people.
Whoa.
Where like, it was just like the books or the pictures. If you've ever seen, like, there's the physical body, and then around them are like these wavy colors, different sort of shapes and stuff. And I would just look around and I would see them around everybody. It was crazy. Like I hadn't done psychedelics then. Now that I've done more of that, like it's sort of psychedelic, but also like not at all. It's like totally lucid, completely like plain and clear. And oftentimes without even trying, I would just look at somebody and be like, oh, like they've got purple over their right shoulder. They've got green over here. This is yellow. The aura looks totally formed here, but it's not formed over there. It was crazy.
Wow.
And, it was what it felt like to me was like I had a finger in a light socket where all of a sudden I felt sort of electrified. But, again, I don't know why, but I didn't really freak out. It was just kind of like, oh, this is what's happening now. And I would talk to my mom about it, and my mom's amazing. And, she would be like, oh, that's interesting. And then she'd go to immediately to this place like, well, why isn't that happening to me?
Totally. Because I think a lot of people, myself included, I'm listening to this. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, I want to see colors. I would love to be able to see auras and different things.
Yeah, it's cool. And also, like, it was unnerving.
Sure.
I was like,
especially when you're a teenager boy.
I think it was a sophomore in high school when that started. Maybe it was a junior. And so, I think it might have been a junior, maybe a junior. No, I don't. Anyway, end of sophomore year, maybe. It was weird and bizarre, and then as these things happen, especially during, I don't want to call it an awakening because that's so like intense and loaded, but that's what it felt like, of like the veil sort of being removed from my eyes. I started connecting with this girl that I had grown up with, and her name is Olivia. She's amazing. She's out there fighting all the good fights in the world right now. And for some reason, I just felt called to talk to her and tell her what was happening to me. And without missing a beat, she was like, oh, I see auras too.
Oh, whoa.
I was like, are you kidding? Like, that's like, what? And she was like a black belt in Taekwondo, like super dope. And she's like, yeah, I see auras. And then she's like, I fly in my dreams. She does like all this crazy stuff, like hardcore lucid dreaming. And I don't know if she still does, but she used to. Anyway, so we were in, I think it was poetry or English class together. And we started sitting next to each other in class.
Mm-hmm.
And we would like test each other. We would play with the energy that we were seeing, and we'd, point at somebody and be like, what do you see there? And I would describe what I was seeing, and she would be like, yeah, that's exactly what I see. And then I would do the opposite. I would be like, what about this person? Then she would tell me, and it would match up, which now that I have even more experience with energy and working with people is like kind of crazy that there would be such like that the colors that she saw was what I saw,
Right.
know? And I remember I would spend time where I would like make my hands in a triangle and I would fill it with a color. I'd be really intentional about just imagining and filling it with a color. And then I would ask her what she saw, and then we would just test each other. And so right away I was getting like a bunch of confirmation to just be like, yeah, you can trust yourself, trust what you're seeing. It felt like it sort of reminds me now of surfing, where you get sort of picked up by the wave. And there's that moment where like you finish paddling and the wave has picked you up and you're about to pop up on the board, where everything is just sort of like floaty. It's like the most amazing thing where like your power is meeting the power of the wave and then you just like take off. And that's what it felt like. It was just like everything was being opened. And yeah, the coolest thing I think that happened during that time as far as seeing auras go is that one day she and I were sitting in this English class, and I was looking at the teacher, and I don't remember what he said, but all of a sudden there was like this white light that like came down from the ceiling and like hit his head. And then it sort of was this kind of like cascade of purple that was like flowing around him.
Wow.
And it was like so like obvious and jarring to me. And I was like, whoa. And so I leaned over to Olivia. I was like, do you see that? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, I didn't believe her. I was like, what are you seeing?
Right.
And then she
Because you want to test it.
Yeah, totally.
Of course.
Always.
I
Still
would
to
too.
this day.
Yeah.
And so then she described it exactly as I was seeing. And I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. It's crazy. And this English teacher he's awesome. He's an amazing man. And I had the next day, I was supposed to have a conference with him to go over some of the stuff that I was writing. And the night before, I hear this voice that's like, in your meeting with him, you have to tell him what you saw today. And I was like, there's no way. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to like let him in on this. And like, how is that conversation going to go?
Like, hey, I saw weird colors in your class today. He's going to be like, what were you smoking before you came to my class, young man? Let's go to the principal's office and I'm calling your mom.
Totally. And so, as I tend to do then, especially, I was like, no. And then the next day, I'm hearing it all day. Like when you have your meeting, you got to tell them what you saw. It's like, no. And then the meeting goes, the time for the meeting arrives and I'm sitting there with him. And I pull out my, poem or whatever, the thing was I was working on. And just that feeling was so overwhelming. I was like, there's an opportunity here. And so I told him, I've loaded it with disclaimers like, hey, I don't know. I don't really know what's happening. Things are going on. Like, I'm getting some confirmations, but I don't really know. And I have to tell you something.
Well, you tell him he was glowing white and purple.
Yeah. So I was like, hey, like, the start of class yesterday, there was like this energy that just like came down and it felt like it hit your head and like your whole body was like, the energy field was like purple and like it was like you had an antenna through the ceiling, like to source, like just totally connected.
Wow.
And as I'm telling this, he starts crying. Now I'm maybe 15, 16 years old. Like, and now my teacher is crying, having this like tremendous truth response to what I just told him. And he looked at me, with tears in his eyes, and he says, every time I start the class, I say a prayer that I can be, a vessel for like consciousness to inspire you guys and to like, you know, just to do the work.
Wow.
And you know, he took that as confirmation, right? That like the
his
prayer
prayer.
was heard, and it was just so rad. It was so beautiful, you know, and I don't know, you know, these things when they happen young, especially, it's like so impressionable. And I have no idea how the story lands now. You know, it's been what 25 years later, you know, almost 30 years later. But I think about that, you know, of just like the power of energy and what can happen when we just pay attention. And I was just so fortunate, and I don't know why at the time, that I didn't have to try. It just happened. And it was such a gift. It was also a curse. I mean, it was like, you know, there was like shit that happened that was difficult with as part of that. I made choices in my life that, you know, maybe I wouldn't have made otherwise had I not been so tuned in. But, you know, to be able to impact someone and just to see and to feel their energy, it's just tremendous.
Well, and now, you know, for over the last 20 years, you've used this tool to that, you know, that you do see things and feel things differently than many of us, that, you know, to be able to help people awaken that within themselves. And I know that, you know, a lot of people that have come to your office or come to you, they just like you confided in Olivia, right? They come to you to talk about some of these experiences and some of these things that they're seeing and feeling as they start to awaken this more psychic sense within them. And so, you know, for this course that we're doing, this energy body course, as you are the main, you know, character in writing the whole thing, really, it's just all of your experiences over the last 20 years. What do you feel like, you know, this course offers in terms of somebody who is, you know, maybe they have had some of these awakening experiences? I know, like for me, I really had never seen any energies or spirits or really knew much about that world. I loved yoga and I loved teaching yoga, and I knew about the chakras and things, and I was pretty familiar with the energy bodies, but I hadn't really started to have different like visions per se. I guess I did, but I'm a little bit, but I didn't really understand them and I didn't have anyone to talk to about them. So, you know, is this course something for somebody who's seeing some of this stuff and feeling these things that can go deeper? Or can you talk a little bit about how you've helped people over the last 20 years to just mentor and support that awakening process within them?
Yeah. So this course for me is really just about like getting some information out there where, you know, the last 2 years have really shined a light for me on the importance of being sovereign, the importance of being able to be empowered and to, you know, to engage in your own healing and growth and development, and to have the tools to integrate, you know, a lot of different energies without necessarily being dependent on Big Brother, big pharma, big industry. It's like, you know, this kind of, you talk about a lot of this grassroots revolution. And so, you know, I have had a lot of experience and have lived in this kind of world of the energy bodies. You know, first it was these kind of auric experiences, then certainly studying Chinese medicine and this idea of qi. And, you know, as much as they're trying to sort of standardize Chinese medicine now, and you've got, you know, these people doing like dry needling and all of this other shit, they're trying to make it so sterile, and that's probably not the best. Acupuncture is sterile, but they're trying to make the information be so devoid of like the spirituality and the energy, and we can't do that. It's just like, it's a part of who we are. And so, you know, this is like the sort of what I think is the first step or the next step of a lot of things we have planned to help people feel empowered, to help guide them to get in touch with themselves. Whether, you know, we'll be talking about auras, we're talking a little bit about the Meridian system, we're talking a lot about chakras, because I believe that chakras are really sort of the easiest kind of entryway into connecting with the body. And we're going to be talking about essential oils, which is like great ways and tools to be able to balance those things out, to, you know, where hopefully with the stories that you get from the course and, you know, from the podcast and whatever, you feel more comfortable and confident in just kind of trusting your own experience, and to hopefully we'll be able to create a community where people can share their stories and their energy, their experiences, so that you can start to trust yourself. Like as I said in the beginning, that's probably the biggest thing that I had that other people haven't had. If there's one thing that I've heard the most in my office over the years is like, wow, I can talk to you about things that I don't talk to anybody else with or about,
Sure.
and like, that's it. I had people early on in my life that I could talk to about these things, and the cultivation of that sort of the vision or sensitivity was always encouraged instead of being told I was crazy or to shut it down or whatever.
That's awesome.
And so, like for instance, like I remember this one client, she came in, or this is early on in my acupuncture practice. She came in and I forget what her chief complaint was, but I remember I was sitting, she was laying flat on the table and I was sitting like at her head, and I was just like in my mind's eye going through like the different chakras and trying to get like a reading of just a sense, right? So I should say that the obvious colors that I saw then aren't really what I see anymore, because I found ultimately for me that it wasn't that helpful. It was cool, but it wasn't that helpful. Like seeing orange or green or purple around somebody, it's like, oh, that's like an interesting look, but I didn't really know like what that meant. And especially back then as a 15, 16, 17-year-old, I was very limited in my ability to actually like do anything about it.
Right.
And so at some point, like if you look at someone and you're like, oh, there's like a hole in your aura, but I had nothing else to offer.
Right.
It's kind of messed up. I'm not going to just go
Right.
up to them and be like, oh, you look like you're, whatever. Did someone punch you in the stomach or whatever? And now we have so many tools and stuff. And I think this next generation is just like, they're prepared for this.
So when you would see someone that's like their energy, for example, is orange, would that correlate to you now that you know more about the chakras and energy body, that you'd be like, oh, that person is really creative, or that person is in an abundant mindset right now, or they're, super sexual in their energy and they're comfortable in their sexuality and that's why they're glowing orange? Or is that the reason why it wasn't helpful, because those energies, those colors that you were seeing weren't actually correlating with the chakras?
Yeah, at the time, I don't think I even knew that the chakras had colors, or that there was an association. And what it seemed to me is that like the colors would mean different things to different people. Like a buddy of mine who's really dialed in, if he sees yellow around someone, that means like big time disease, and like most people, I think if it'd be like if they're scanning an organ or something and they see red, that would indicate more inflammation. For him, it's yellow. And honestly, I never really cared to like get that refined with the colors, because what I found out as I started working with people is that I was much more interested in shapes and textures.
Interesting.
And so more often than not, like over the last 20 years, when I'm working with someone, I'll get a feeling of a shape or a texture or where things are moving or where they're not moving. And that to me is much more diagnostic and helpful than seeing a color.
Cool.
And I also like that because it's more tangible. You tell someone that like, oh, you see this color, some people are going to be stoked. Most people are like intrigued. But if you tell someone like, hey, like you're like, why do I feel like when I get to your throat, I feel like I'm being choked? And I've had clients where, it's like okay, I'm scanning your energy. I'm sort of, in some ways, I'm asking myself, what is it like to be you? And like just trying to experience your body. And I feel like I'm being suffocated. Like, when were you choked? And then usually there's that truth response where they start crying and, or whatever. It's like, and, this one time I was working on this client. So I'm at her head and I'm just sort of scanning her body. And when I get to her heart, so the chakras, and we'll talk about this in the class, but the chakras should be spinning clockwise, right? So when things are going well and we're feeling good, typically we'll experience those chakras as spinning clockwise. And when I got to her heart, I was like, it was immediately like spinning counterclockwise. And I was like, ooh, that's not like, as I know things, that's not the way that it should go. And I also believe that when you're working on somebody, you get the messages that you need and that make sense to you so that you can do like what needs to be done. And ultimately, like, let me just make this abundantly clear. Like, I'm not doing anything to anybody. if anything, I'm just loving on them and I'm magnifying like their prayer of,
Sure.
wanting to feel good or whatever. Like whatever. Yeah, that's a much longer thing. But, I'm loving on somebody and I'm
Right.
seeing them, right? I believe that like my job as like a quote unquote healer, more often than not, is just to be a witness.
Yeah.
And that's the great gift of doing what we've done and being in the service is like, I get a front row seat to people's transformations, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, this is like spinning backwards. So I start, saying a prayer and doing some energy stuff. And the moment that I see the chakra start to spin clockwise, like I'm not saying anything to her, I'm just doing what I'm doing. And the moment that I see that, she just immediately takes gas for air, takes a huge inhalation.
Wow.
And then just starts sobbing.
Wow.
And, it turned out, I don't remember, like, someone died and she hadn't cried in a year. And like, it was just like all of a sudden there it is.
Wow.
But this is what I want people to like begin to experience. That might sound too far fetched, but, in the course, like just through having this conversation, the power of the community, we're going to be getting together in this. Like, I want people to be able to have the courage to dive in and experience themselves and others. And then, of course, we're going to empower them with oils that they can use, where we've got the power of the plant medicine that's going to, help to the body to find, its homeostasis, help to find that optimal flow. And we'll be able to recruit certain essential oils for certain imbalances, where we can really take the full advantage of what those plants and the resins and the flowers have to offer, as far as opening the heart, helping us feel more grounded and whatever.
Yeah, because the oils, the oils are a beautiful tool, just like Reiki or yoga or acupuncture. There's all different modalities that help us to move energy, see energy, play with energy. And, I'm a firm believer, as someone who really, I think I did have more spiritual inclinations and was curious about all this stuff when I was younger, but it really wasn't until I started seeing you for acupuncture and I started meditating and doing, some of the quote unquote weird stuff, sound meditations and various things, that I really started diving deeper into being able to see and feel differently, and being able to use that with my clients and in my own life has been a complete game changer, because I really didn't know the difference between my intuition before, I think, and fear. Like I really had no idea what that spiritual guidance. Of course, like I'm being guided by my intuition and my spirit guides all the time. But, I think that in my practical experience of being a yoga teacher, I was so focused in the physical world and just elbows in, chaturanga, focusing on that physical practice, that I didn't really understand that I could take it deeper. And, from learning from you and going through, I would say, like a personal learning experience with you for, 10 years now, that I've been able to awaken this and have some crazy experiences and then have you validate them. And I'm someone who didn't just start seeing auras when I was 15, right? Or experiencing when I would touch a client's feet, for example, and, immediately get a sense, like what you said, of, oh my gosh, I'm just feeling their father. And it turns out, their father had passed away, and they are able to have that experience in Shavasana where I'm, able to hold them and hold that energy for them. And there are things happening, right? And I can feel it, they can feel it, but maybe we don't know how to do that. And that's certainly not something that they teach us in yoga teacher training. And it's certainly not something that I've ever learned in any of the courses that I've done, is really how to hold space for people and to learn the depths of energy. And so I'm really excited for this course, because I think that the more that we can talk about this stuff, especially as practitioners, because I know a lot of, Reiki, massage, yoga teachers, and fellow wellness entrepreneurs listen to this podcast. So I think it's really great to be able to create a community and encourage these kinds of conversations so that we can show up for each other in a more powerful way, because I believe everybody is psychic, and that it's just it's a muscle, just like any other muscle in our body, that we can really grow and become more attuned and to see and feel on a deeper level. And that really is yoga. That's union. That's unity, is when we can see and feel on a deeper level and be able to love people more from that truth and that authentic space.
Yeah. And for me, I don't care so much about like, I don't even know what that word psychic means. Like, I have no idea what the definition is. For me, these are just like, there's different avenues to understanding and experiencing the self. And the more that I can see me, the more I can see others. And the more that I can like honor the divine in me and like the preciousness of this life, the kinder and like more present I can be with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that, more so than anything else, is like the thing that really gets me so excited about it. And we're going to be in the course, we'll talk about a meditation that I did when I was in like probably my mid-20s, which was the one that really, it was the first time I really like felt the chakras. Like, it was the first time that I really got a sense of like, oh, these are like, I get it now, the wheel and the energies and the colors. And as much as had been seeing auras and like doing energy things, and I was already an acupuncturist, these moments of kind of awareness, and they come at different times. And so if like all of this stuff sounds really crazy, or you have no interest in working on other people, like that's totally fine. We're going to be talking through processes and just experiences that you can use just to understand yourself better, and even if you're like, I don't feel anything ever before, like that's totally fine. Like, we're going to be giving you framework and some support to be able to dive into yourself, and let's just see what we see.
And maybe you feel something and maybe you don't. And either way, if you're feeling the calling and you're curious about this and you're still listening to this podcast as of right now, that's probably because your intuition is actually guiding you to this. And there is some part of you that would like to know more and experience more and grow. And that is, I believe, beautiful. And honor that thread and follow it and see where it takes you. Because who knows, maybe you'll end up being a yoga teacher, having a van and doing a podcast with an acupuncturist. You never know where the path will lead you if you follow that thread.
Yeah, and there's just so much more to get into. So hopefully you guys will join us in the course. It's Oils in the Energy Body. You can reach out to me, on Instagram is probably easiest, at James E. Rohr. You can find Jenny at Jennifer Panza. You can email us at pleasurepointspodcast.com or pleasurepointspodcast@gmail. And we will send over the information and get you signed up. It's not going to be very expensive, super easy. It's going to be great.
Yes, we cannot wait. It's going to be so awesome.
Do you need to drink some water? What's going on?
I don't know. I feel like a frog.
I don't think you're not allowed to be sick anymore.
No, I'm not sick. I think it's allergies because we're outside. Everything is blooming here. It's horrible.
Should we talk about your throat chakra then?
I'm going to go take a allergy shot right now and do some throat chakra activations.
Dear God, please come so that it's not just Jen and I talking.
It's just like when we were in Mexico and I was talking to the whales. I'm going to activate my Dory from Finding Nemo,
Oh, I remember.
Hello.
Oh, you're going to do it now?
Hello. Yeah, I'm doing my throat chakra activations. Oh.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for listening and being back here. We're going to be one of the things that I'm super passionate about that kind of coincides with the course. Look forward in future episodes. I'm going to be breaking down different body parts and what some of those blocks might mean energetically as the energy body and physically, and coming up with different oils and movements and different things to consider. So if that is the sort of thing that interests you, stay tuned for future episodes of the Pleasure Points podcast, and check us out at Oils in the Energy Body. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thanks, everyone. Bye.